let's talk about how the new law has impacted you and how you function and just what you call. We've heard the term dispensary, Mr. Holmes, and we've heard the term collective garden. How do you resolve the differences in A, what people should refer to you as, how do you refer to yourself, and what is, describe the business for us?
Well, I tend to like to go off the board. I'm a patient resource center. When you have these people that have need for medical cannabis, there are all sorts of things. I mean, just getting the cannabis itself is fulfilling one need. However, there are there are doctors out there that will actually treat you with cannabis. There's a lot of doctors out there that because of the laws on them, they have very expensive education. They don't want to go out of their way to recommend a Schedule I narcotic. So sometimes you need to be able to, even with those people that have a clear need for cannabis, they cannot get their primary physician to give them a recommendation just because their primary physician worries about how the federal government is going to view them. So step one, making sure that those people, you know, your MS, you know, what have you, have an appropriate doctor. So we give them resources to doctors. A lot of the people grow themselves and are a community garden. Well, how do you form a community garden? How do you do a community garden safely? There are code impacts. How do you do it without burning your place down? That's a neighborhood impact. So we offer counseling services for that. Okay, you're a community garden. Now you've grown more in your community garden than you need. What do you do with it? And how can you do that in as close to compliance with the law as you can? Well, we you know, we offer services that way, as long as everything has been treated from seed to when we take possession of it, like medicine. You know, there are no adulterants in it. It has a good flush. It's not going to do anyone any harm. And a lot of people don't realize that these people that have the need for cannabis have compromised immune systems. It's probably not a good idea for them to have medicine that has a bunch of animal hair in it. You know, I have an allergic reaction away from closing. So trimming services, finding out how to not only set up as a community garden legally or as close to legal as they can, but you know, then how do they do it? Once you do that, if you're going to set up as a legal business, you're going to have a business entity, which is what the city of Seattle has told us they wanted. They're going to need a bank. They're going to need banking services. A lot of banks will not touch the cannabis industry. Anything that has a cannabis component, they will not touch. They will actually seize your bank accounts. We can get them bank accounts. You know, insurance. How do you insure, you know, the growth of a Schedule I narcotic? Well, if you're going through traditional insurance, you're going to find some brick walls. But I mean,
you have a product like any other business would have a product.
Yeah.
And any other business can insure their product.
Yeah, we
against theft, against fire, against a number of. Can you insure your product?
Absolutely. We have crop insurance. You can get your crop insured to make sure that producing. We have governmental intervention insurance that you can purchase just in case, you know, they decide to break down your door.
I want to stay on the subject now of medicinal marijuana and what's in place and how you regulate it. Are there zoning laws in place that prohibit medicinal marijuanas, dispensaries, collective gardens, as an example, from being 1,000 feet within a school? How do you regulate at this point? I mentioned before that it's confusing to a lot of people. How do you regulate? How do you zone? Is there something in place for those who are listening out there right now that are saying, you know what, I don't have a problem with recreational marijuana, I don't have a problem with medicinal marijuana, but I don't need it next to the daycare?
Great question. And so far in Seattle, there are no zoning rules. What we are requiring, the council is considering an add-on bill to accompany the ordinance that was passed last month that would that might address zoning. But so far, all that the city has said is comply with our existing rules on business licenses, on permits. You know, if you're going to remodel your establishment, make sure that you get building permits to do so. Make sure you comply with electrical rules. As Mr. Davis pointed out, we want to make sure you have appropriate service. That's what the City of Seattle has said at a time when other counties and municipalities across the state have taken steps to, for instance, enact moratoriums, saying absolutely no distribution of medical marijuana in our jurisdiction whatsoever. Seattle's taken a different approach. We can't guarantee that you won't be prosecuted by other authorities, but what we have made clear is if you're going to be a medical marijuana provider in our city, you must comply with all existing business rules and regulations. And as of right now, zoning is not an issue in Seattle. And you know, I think it behooves all of us to kind of watch and see. I'll be back in the legislature with our delegation when the next session starts up in January, trying once again to see if we can get a bill passed that would give more clarity that we lack now. And I think it's important that users and providers all, you know, behave responsibly. As it stands right now, Seattle has not witnessed any raids by federal authorities, by the Drug Enforcement Administration, for instance, although they have done so in Spokane. And I think that it's one of those things where we need to all be adults while we're in this limbo area. Anyone who wants to go and push it over the edge, as I'm sure Mr. Davis would tell his members, is really inviting a law enforcement action, and it could set it back for everyone. So cannabis as a medicine for authorized users is an immediate problem. I remain committed to trying to find ways that we can do so responsibly. And the long-term solution, of course, being legalization for adult recreational use. All of the medical issues that we're talking about should go away. But right now, we're fortunate we live in a city where every single elected official at City Hall is in favor of legalization and is clearly in favor of providing a safe avenue for medical marijuana users to obtain their medicine. The mayor, all 9 council members, myself, every member of Seattle's delegation to the state legislature, all the senators, all the state representatives are all in favor of legalization. But we have to act, because this is a state law issue, we have to act according to what the will of the state is. And again, we saw a milestone in the last session when we had a bipartisan bill that passed. We also saw, I think, a tremendous milestone when we saw the state's largest newspaper, daily newspaper, the Seattle Times, come out and in favor of legalization for adult recreational use. The truth of the matter is, Tony, it's an exciting time that Seattle is leading the state, and the state's going to lead the country. And we all need together. We need to work together and to make sure that that all of our we recognize that we're all going for that same eventual goal, to having some sane policy. Prohibition has failed. In the 40 years since Richard Nixon declared war on drugs, we spent over $1 trillion. We have the unenviable record of having more of our citizens incarcerated than any other nation on the planet. That's in absolute terms, there's the raw numbers as well as a percentage of our population. 52% of those inmates are in there for non-violent drug offenses. We are wasting our resources, we are pillaging our communities, and we need to stop this. We need to stop it now.
This is Tony Reed. You're listening to a Street Beat town hall meeting. We are talking about issues surrounding recreational medicinal marijuana. Right now we are focusing in specifically on where, when, I'm calling this zoning issues. 600,000 people, and I'm rounding that off, maybe live in the city of Seattle. It's been projected that 25,000 of those are marijuana users. Conversely, 575,000 are not. If there is a dispensary garden collective next to my home and I don't like it, what can I do about it? You're the city attorney. Who do I complain to? It's illegal. It's a federal Schedule 1 drug. What rights do I have as a citizen at that point? Who can I talk to? Everyone is telling me, oh, it's legalized, it's going to be legal, and that is percentage. I don't want this next to my house. I don't want it next to the daycare. What can I do?
Again, great question. Interestingly, I get out in the community quite a bit, and when I talk with citizen groups that would be, for instance, you would expect to be more concerned about public safety issues than medical marijuana users, I found a pretty uniformly tolerant attitude among citizens in Seattle. They said, we want to make sure that people have access to medicine. We simply want to make sure there's not a public safety problem. And there are some real public safety problems. As Mr. Davis can tell you, he and his clients, or his association members, have a very, very valuable product. It has incredible street value, and there's also a lot of cash as well associated with it. They are targets for armed invasions. That has happened already in our city. That is a public safety problem that no responsible prosecutor is going to ignore. There are also more quality of life issues, such as odor, parking issues. There are all kinds of things that irresponsible dispensaries can really be bad neighbors. And
right now you can put these things up anywhere you want to.
They are located all over. And again, I want to emphasize that simply complying with Seattle's ordinance does not mean that you're in compliance with state or federal law. And just because I'm not prosecuting possession cases does not mean you will not be arrested. And you can be arrested and prosecuted by other authorities, other jurisdictions. And it's very, very important that people understand that. It's not all bets off in Seattle. It's still illegal under state and federal law. And so we gotta keep our eye on that. But citizens do call in. We have complaints from some of, I think, the less desirable operators who really are not concerned about providing a service to their clients. They are more concerned about turning a buck. And those guys that are skirting the law, that are kind of flaunting it, I think are going to come to a rude awakening. Seattle has said, comply with our rules. They are the most tolerant in the state, but God help you if you can't comply with Seattle's rules. And we've already found some that are not going with the permitting, are not being caring neighbors, and I think that they're going to find that they are not a tolerated business in this city.
Mr. Davis, again, this is Tony B. You're listening to a live Street Beat Town Hall meeting. My guest, our city attorney, Pete Holmes, and the owner of Northwest Patient Resource Center, Mr. John Davis. Tell me about the relationship you have with your community, and what did you do, if you did anything at all, to meet with the members of the community that you are now set up in with your, I guess, 2 locations, right?
No, just single location,
Single location.
West Seattle, 35th and Roxbury. We did a lot of community outreach. Actually, we were helped. I mean, it was always our plan to do community outreach, but first thing you have to do is get a location. It's like any other business. I mean, there's a way that you have to do it. But actually, the West Seattle Herald picked up on our lease 2 days after we signed it because the medical marijuana topic is very hot. But that actually helped to start the conversation. When we had those questions on. Actually, it was West Seattle Blog, followed by West Seattle Herald. West Seattle Blog picked up on it almost immediately. But the legitimate questions. Are you going to bring violence into my neighborhood? Are you going to bring undesirables into my neighborhood? It's just this simply organized crime moving into my neighborhood. What are you going to do? I mean, are you going to have big cannabis leaves everywhere, so when I'm driving by to Pilates, I have to answer some uncomfortable questions to my kids? These are all really good questions. And so the West Seattle Blog actually helped me address a lot of it. But also, the way that we set up also helped to address a lot of it. We are, as Pete says, we are can be a target because whether or not we have large amounts of cash on site, we are viewed as having large amounts of cash on site. I mean, we do daily bank drops because of that. Keep as little product on site, as little money on site as possible. But we are all bulletproof glass assemblies, laminated Kevlar walls. We have, my security guy said to me, he said, John, you are doing things that banks don't do. And I said, exactly right. There is, in the security protocols, we have a man trap to get in the back. You cannot physically just put your foot in the door to get in the back, and you're in a threat-proof, bulletproof assembly there too. And all this, and the protocols that you have to go, the training that you have to do with your